Today, I wanted to do a video explaining exactly why an armed citizenry would not only have a fighting chance at overthrowing the government, but why the odds are actually stacked in their favor. But first, I figure a little entertainment is in order. My it's been rather dry lately, and I think we could all do with a little humor. In a new short segment I would like to call Brainlet Bloviations. Let's do it. You can't take our guns. If the government tries to take over, we have the right to stop them. Yeah, let me know what happens when you bring a gun to a drone fight. If the government wanted to take over, they'd do so easily. LMAO. Well, shit, guys, he's got us there. We should just surrender to tyranny right now. You can't fight those drones. That's why the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and the Islamic State aren't around anymore. They're not. They're gone. They've been completely obliterated. It was drones that ended the war on terror just 1 year after the September 11th terror attacks, wasn't it? It was drones that stopped ISIS in early 2014 before they could accrue any real territorial gains, right? Wait, all those groups still exist? It's almost like air superiority isn't the key deciding factor in a war against a guerrilla insurgency. Also, the government doesn't need to take over. They already have power. That's why they're the government. Serious question. Why can't we have rocket launchers? I mean, if we're really going to fight the government, we definitely need rocket launchers. Serious answer. I agree wholeheartedly. And not just to fight the government. It is our Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. The left loves to point out how the Second Amendment isn't specific as to what type of weaponry is permitted, assuming that it means the weaponry of the era, i.e., muskets and cannons. Unfortunately for them, that argument goes both ways, motherfucker. So strap in. I would love nothing more than to unload on that old car at the range with my Mark 19 40mm belt-fed automatic grenade launcher. I would be thrilled to go duck hunting with my FIM 92 Stinger. Sadly, that's not the world we live in. But don't worry. In the event of Revolutionary War II Electric Boogaloo, I'm confident that we won't have any trouble getting a hold of these weapons. More on that in a bit. Gun enthusiasts. We need our guns to fight off the government. Okay, so where are all the independent nations located within the US that have already tried? Oh, there aren't any? Oh, they're all dead or in jail? But your guns can fight off the government, so... just bullshit. You hear that, guys? He wants to see the independent nations located within the US that have already tried this. There actually is one. And I know that you know of it, though you're likely ignorant of its history. It's the green one on this map right here. I know it's a little small, but if you squint, you just might see it. You see, the United States used to be a part of the British Empire under the rule of King George III. Long story short, he was a dick, so we fought back against the British government and won our independence. If that's not a solid proof of concept, then I don't know what is. This 220 IQ Rick and Morty fan actually provides a decent segue into a topic which I would just like to briefly discuss. That being revolutions throughout history. And don't worry, we'll be seeing more of these intellectual juggernauts real soon. There was, of course, the aforementioned American Revolution, where British citizens fought back against the oppression of the Crown and won independence from Great Britain. Only a short time after that, there was the French Revolution, caused by economic hardship, political struggle between the aristocracy and the bourgeoisie, and the general incompetence of King Louis XVI. Later on, we had the Russian February Revolution in 1917, which overthrew the Tsarist government. And not even a year later, the October Revolution, where the Bolsheviks overthrew the provisional government, bringing the communist government to power. While I definitely believe Russia could have ended better, it still proves the point that governments can be overthrown by their people. Now, in the event of the US government turning tyrannical, how would an armed citizenry do against them? I believe it'd go very well for them, for several reasons. First, most of the people who make the "you can't fight the government" argument seem to hold our service members in such a low regard that they think of them as nothing but robots. They are not. They are capable of critical thought, and as such, capable of deciding what side that they're going to fight on. We would not be fighting the entirety of the United States military. There would be defectors. The military would be fighting its own. Now the government isn't just dealing with Bubba out in the woods. They're dealing with Bubba and a decent amount of their own turned against them. along with their remaining forces being spread more thin. These defectors would take with them as much weaponry as they could get their hands on, including rocket launchers, which deals with the drone problem. Some of these defectors may choose to stay in their jobs, becoming saboteurs. Many defectors would also have key information that would be of critical danger to the US government. What information the rebels couldn't use themselves? They would be able to deliver to the US's foreign enemies. Which brings me to my next point. This isn't your grandma's proxy war contained between two powers in the Middle East. This is America. Everything is supersized here. The second that the US enters into a civil war is the second that it becomes a proxy war between NATO and whoever wants to fuck with America. If Russia, which is, spoiler alert, one of the best militaries in the world at fighting in an urban environment, sent trainers and helpers to the rebels, you can reliably bet that they would also deliver weapons to the rebels, which would likely include some heat-seeking surface-to-air missiles, helping to deal with the drone problem. Now, instead of just Bubba and the defectors out in the woods, they're dealing with Bubba, the defectors, and their friends Vlad and Dmitri. Now when it comes to optics, it is a much bigger problem for the US government than it is for the rebels. Our hypothetical civil war would be a PR nightmare for them. Every rebel killed on US media would be spun as, the US government killed X civilians today in a strike on international media. One quick, slightly off-topic point. Given the amount of shit that the US has gotten for killing civilians in the past with misplaced drone strikes, they would likely choose to use that option as little as possible, alleviating the drone strike problem just a little bit. This is all, of course, if the US media could even function properly in a civil war. The US power grid, with few exceptions, is actually rather vulnerable. A few marksmen hitting certain spots on the grid would fuck a lot of the military and government because they need the grid more than the in-a-woods rebels do. Additionally, while all essential government agencies have backup generators, they will be hard-pressed dealing with the resulting looting and other madness that would come with extended power outages. This would create another front for the government, thus helping to alleviate the drone problem. It would also turn the people against the government quicker and paralyze the government's propaganda machine. Worse for them still, the key points of the US power grid are public obtainable information, and not only are the points too many to be effectively guarded, they are largely unguarded anyway. Considering that the left are the ones that want to take our guns away, these next points deal with the hypothetical that this civil war would be the rebels versus a left-wing president. Feel free to take it or leave it. I feel like I've made my point effectively at this point. Logistics and infrastructure in the US is complete shit. Any war fought against rebellion in the US would be a logistical nightmare even before the rebels started going full Al-Qaeda and putting IEDs on the road. The most leftist cities, like New York City, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Washington, D.C., would also be the most logistically easy to cut off. Most of them require crossing water to get into from certain directions. They all have critical airports, most of them have critical ocean ports, and if anything happened to just one of these cities, it would be a logistical nightmare. Here's a little fact about the flyover redneck red states that the, oh look how progressive we are blue states should take note of. Blue states are mostly consumer states. The majority of food grown in the US comes from red states. Urban areas aren't known for their farms, you know. The second shit hits the fan, understand that a lot of the blue states are likely to starve. Speaking of blue versus red states, the US has a lot of choke points, and the government forces would be on the wrong side of them. Leftists like to live near the ocean. Many of the dividers in the country, like the Rocky Mountains, the Mississippi River, the Appalachia, and the Missouri River, are red state areas. Yes, air travel is a thing, but a majority of the US government's needs would have to travel by ground, and even still, many of the major airports are located outside of the city. Of course, the US would use military base airfields, but if civil war did break out, which bases would be safe? Which ones would have fallen to traitors? And finally, the US will never nuke its own. The second it does, they have lost, as the other developed nations of the world will come to liberate the US from its own repressive regime. Additionally, if any general, Minuteman, nuke tech, or nuke subcaptain decided to side with the rebellion, then the government is shit out of luck. That's about all I got. This is hardly a comprehensive list, by the way. I'm certain that there are factors that I left out. It seems to me that whenever the argument that you can't take on the military comes up, that they are willingly not taking a second to think about it. It seems like they assume that civilians are incapable of organizing and engaging in tactics and coming up with strategies, while the US military has no deficiencies whatsoever and no qualms about killing their own. The Taliban in Afghanistan ran the large professional armies of both the Soviet Union and the United States ragged over the course of decades, and they still exist to this day. A bunch of illiterate goat herders with outdated weaponry. Against another government and military that would eventually surrender, the US is the best. But against its own citizens engaging in guerrilla tactics with the "I would rather live on my feet than die on my knees" mentality, that would be a whole different story. Hopefully I made a good argument, and hopefully you enjoyed the video. Feel free to share this with anyone you see making the fallacious argument that the US military is unstoppable. Just in case this is flagged, this is not a call to violence against the government. These are just the facts as I see them. Thanks for watching.